If you get it, want to do at some point. Talk about open structure.
No, I just told people if they want to use poll everywhere.
I thought it was being in the class, you know, blathering on and the teachers look at that.
Just doing something on readability and how it says that red on green is not readable.
I will change that then.
It's not because I'm old and I need glasses. That has nothing to do with that.
Is that better?
I don't know.
Wait.
Yes,
All right.
because I had written poll.
I just used poll everywhere in class today.
Oh, good. Well, this is kind of for people who may not be used to it, so to know how to play with it. Honestly, like, it's my opinion that it's better to not rely on it in case it doesn't work well. So we could be doing these things in a different way. It's just kind of fun.
So you wanted to?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Emily Heidrich, and I work here as a project manager in the Center for Language Teaching Advancement on two of our large grants here, the Proficiency Grant as well as the Less Commonly Taught Languages Partnership. And my colleagues on that grant with me here, Luca Giupponi, and then Koen van Gorp as well. But Luca and I are going to be heading up this presentation today. So as part of our grant, one of the things that we are doing is creating open educational resources in several different languages. And we realize that open educational resources, or OERs, are really not known across the, like, all of the teachers, instructors, not only here, but in general across the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So we have had to create some materials to describe them, to say how to best use them, to show people how you can search for them and create them. So we're going to do a little bit about that today. So we're going to ask some questions on what you guys might need to know in general. If you guys don't have any burning questions, we'll just go through a general overview. What they are, why do we use them, what are Creative Commons licenses, how you can find Creative Commons resources, and what are some of the technical considerations for open access, as well as what is a minimum viable product. So this is Poll Everywhere. So what do you need to know about open educational resources? So somebody has asked what open resources are easily accessible by both students and instructors. I will show you that. Obviously, if it's an open resource, hopefully it will be open to everyone, both students and instructors. All right. So I might loop back around to this towards the end, look at your questions to make sure that we've covered everything. So we will talk about where you can find them, what they contain. All right. Perfect. I'm going to wait for just a second to see if any last minute ones are coming in.
I'm typing.
Okay.
All right, loudly, actually.
Okay. Good point. Yep. Okay. So one of the things that you guys can do if you create open educational resources is be the standard bearer, right? So you guys would do things like listing what level they're made for. Not everybody does that. So again, it's what people make and they put out online. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of OERs pretty soon. And one of the cons is that there's no quality control like you would have in a publishing company, right? They might do some editing. There might be some in-house things that students might do, but again, we don't really have that. So Luca is going to talk about what the OERs are in general.
I'm going to give you a brief overview of the definition of OER. This is a definition from SPARC, Scholarly Publishing and Academic Resources Coalition. So OERs are teaching, learning, and research resources released under an open license that permits the free use and repurposing by others. So highlighting three main ideas here. Open license. So this is referring to a specific type of copyright license that Emily will talk about in a minute. But there's a specific meaning to that word, open. Free use simply means that anyone can use them without having to pay for them. And repurposing, meaning that people can access them and also somehow modify them and use them to their own purposes, not just for the one purpose that you've designed them for. So they could come up with novel uses for these resources you had never thought of. And so an open resource, an OER, allows for that within the copyright. There is, if you want to click on the link, there's a center in Texas called Gorp that does really great work with OERs in language learning. So this is, and the URL is core.utexas.edu, and then you can follow the menu to find this list of resources. They have a lot of languages, and all of these are open educational resources. You can access them, you can use them, you can repurpose them to your use, and it's free. Some of them have small fees to purchase print versions, for example, but the electronic version is always free. And so, for example, we were talking about quality control. These resources are all different, but I do believe that Carl at Gorp, that's
Yes.
really weird.
Yes. Yes, but Carl Blythe.
Carl
was at
Blythe
Gorp.
is the director of Gorp,
Yeah.
so that's kind of like a tongue twister. He doesn't enforce, but he tries to encourage quality control from the staff and the people that develop these materials. But that's just these materials, right? It doesn't apply necessarily to OERs that are hosted in a different place. So in terms of quality control, you find a lot of, that's very localized. People that have a passion and stakes in offering OERs might believe in some quality control and might have that umbrella in their website.
Okay. This is another fun pull everywhere. Activating it. All right.
What does free use mean? Well, if you guys were paying attention, you can activate it.
Yeah, it's activated.
No,
What? No?
there you go. Click again.
Ha! Okay.
None.
Carry on. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. So we're getting several responses. Yeah, the free use means you can use it at no cost. There are some restrictions to how you can use it. You can't use it however you want, but then we'll tell you a little bit about how you can use it later. Perfect.
So why don't we take like 2 minutes, and you can turn to the person next to you, and you can maybe think about reasons of why it would be a good thing to use OERs either in your classroom or develop OERs to share with other people.
Oh, okay. So,
So students don't pay.
But
Right. That's because they're raising it.
Well, it's not necessarily just when you're creating criteria.
Yeah, but the books are.
Okay.
Well,
Well, so if they're sharing one to the library, and they can decide what they're also feeding. And generate connections with people. Using those resources, which
you can use
the ability for reciprocity knowledge, a lot of times you don't have a lot of control about whatever out there. It doesn't.
You're not getting a picture.
You're not
A background is in like if you want to be like super nitpicky, you could say if you know how it as well, you can upload a background and then the system superimposes the title of the page or whatever on the website. But maybe if you're creating that banner to have the text within it, then you create yourself and then upload it. That could be modification.
Just trying to explain, you know, that's an example with the
Right.
But that's still resolved.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have that. That's a good question.
Because why would students come to college?
It's for teachers to go and to other
That's the
teachers.
problem with free
So
stuff.
unlike you could go. I maybe go until like 1:30. About 2 minutes, but I mean, we even have an hour. Okay, so you can also use this time to grab pizza if you want, but I'd like to hear from maybe a couple of you. Pros, cons, mostly pros. The question was mostly pros, but we'll talk about cons as well. What are some of the things you discussed in your pairs?
Yeah.
Matt?
Reuse. I like the fact that they're free from a cost perspective, not just for use. So if the students don't have to plop down $100 for a textbook, you can use other resources, and have them pay for those resources if they cost money. There's less of a bite.
Yeah.
So the example we use in 202 is we use Talk Abroad, but that's $30-40 on top of the fact that we have to buy a textbook. And
Right.
we've certainly had had several students complain about it. How come this isn't included? But if they're not paying $100 for a textbook, they won't balk at
Right.
putting $30 down for the conversations.
I like the ease of access, no passwords, no signing up, no credit cards, no, you just say, often it's just a link and you just link it however you want to link it, and so it's pretty easy and flexible.
Yeah.
Obviously, the devil's advocate position for this is that we want to access open educational resources, but what's to make me create things and then put them out publicly without expecting any return on my investment for creating that? I mean, I was just telling Ann about teachers pay teachers. And my students do this all the time. They create lesson plans, they create materials, they put them on this website. Another teacher can come in and pay $2 to download that lesson plan. It's not a big cost usually per item, but it still acknowledges the effort they put into creating it in a small way.
Yeah.
It still gets away from textbooks, but I mean, what really, how do you go advocate for people to do this except,
No, it's a really valid point, because again, what is the incentive for people to create these? So for us, right, people are backed by a grant and they're developing these materials. Would teachers otherwise feel like is it because we work at a land grant institution, right, and we want to be able to share this knowledge to other places? And so I think that is the mission of a lot of the Big Ten institutions. And so there is this culture of sharing things. It might not be the culture of an individual department, but the university has an ethos of sharing knowledge out. So I mean, that's a big argument for OERs, right? And for having the college to support people creating these. But yeah, I mean, there is the concern of what am I getting out of this? Are people just going to take my intellectual property? That kind of stuff.
And modification versus getting credit?
Yeah, we'll talk about Creative Commons licenses in just a minute, yeah.
We do have, there you go, some pros and cons here. Some of them we already talked about. Let's see, what did we not talk about? Quality, we did talk about questions of quality and standards raising. You were talking about the incentive to continue to develop and improve materials. Copyright issues, I think we covered most of this. Yeah. Do you?
Yeah.
Yep, here we go.
So one of the things that's pretty common with teachers is teachers violate copyright all the time. Basically, you just kind of take things wherever you can and you're like, I'm just going to use this and it's okay. But really what we want to get away from is violating copyright, and we want to move towards these open materials and citing our sources and being able to really be like on the very proactive side of being on the right side of the law. So with Creative Commons, you might have seen it here. We have CC, right? What is one C in a circle? Is the symbol for copyright. This is the symbol for Creative Commons. And so I'm going to tell you guys what those little symbols are. So this is a screenshot from Wikipedia where they have a really good like explanation of this. So the little person or the words by, this is attribution. All Creative Commons licenses have attribution as a requirement. You have to say where you found the source, and ideally you have to link back to the source. Especially if it's a web material. So you would always say who you've taken the materials from. Then there are other things that you can add and mix and match with these. I'm going to skip over that one for just a second. Non-commercial is what it sounds like. You can't make money off of it, right? You can't put these materials out and ask for money on a Teachers Pay Teachers. So if I created this and you uploaded it to that site, then that would be in violation of this Creative Commons license. So all of the materials that we develop here for the Lichtel Partnership are non-commercial, so that there's no institution making money off of these materials. We're just offering it out. The no derivative works means like you can show the work as it is, but you are not allowed to edit it. So you might see this a lot with pieces of art that people have put out, or music, or things like that, where they don't want you to crop the picture, they don't want you to change the coloring, but you are allowed to display the photo or play the piece of music freely without violating copyright. And then share alike, if you put this on, then you have to, if you put that on there, then you have to share it in the same manner in which it was originally shared. So for example, if you can make it more restrictive unless you have share alike, right? So if you had attribution and share alike, you cannot change it to something with no commercial. Okay, sorry, I stumbled over my words there. So if you're confused by that, reading up on it on different sites will actually help you. They have examples of how a share alike might be used. We don't use that, so it's not one that I'm as intimately familiar with. So if you guys were paying attention, we can look and see.
It was active.
Oh, dang. There we go. All right. So if a picture on a license says CC, right, Creative Commons, by NC-ND, which one of these is correct? All right. Ooh, good job, guys. All right, yeah, so NC is non-commercial, ND is no derivatives. So you can't change the work, but it's okay. It's not okay to use it for commercial purposes, so you have to have this one. And what's the wrong thing here? It's, yeah, share alike is that part. Okay, good job. Okay, how do you find these open materials? There are several ways to do things. Google is one way, but it's trickier. You have to apply the correct filters and double check that Google's showing you the correct things. So if you go into a Google search and you're just writing Spanish, right? And if you go into images and then advanced, you can filter the pictures that you find by license. So reuse with modification, labeled for reuse, you can look at some of those. I find it easier personally to go on some websites that I know are dedicated to open materials. So Creative Commons search is one of those. So it's just CC search. If you just Google that, you'll get right to it. And then that goes more than just pictures. But a lot of people are using like authentic pictures, or for example, you saw the picture of the book, that was on here a few slides ago. And these are from sites like Pixabay, OpenClipArt, LibreShot. So Pixabay, I'm going to go to it real quick and show you. So over 1.5 million royalty-free stock photos. So my favorite thing to
So
search.
Pixabay by definition?
What?
Pixabay by definition is a.
Yes. So up here, you can see sponsored images, Shutterstock. Those are not free. That's how they make their money, is if you pay for those. If you go below and you see 235 free images, then you can use those. So we're looking at this cute picture of a hippopotamus, and we look at this, and it says CCO, Creative Commons, free for commercial use, no attribution required. So they don't actually have one of those even more restrictive licenses on it. I always like to say where my things are. It's a good practice to link back to it, just to say, yes, I did get this from a free space, but you don't have to. So at the end of this presentation, you'll see a disclaimer that says all images were taken from Pixabay. OpenClipArt is another one. So you can just kind of, they have hippopotamus in here as well. That's what I always search for. So you can see, yeah, HippoClipArt. LibreShot is actually one individual's portfolio of photos that they're just putting out for everybody to take. So free images for blogs, website, no need to mention the author. But again, I like to point people back to the free source just so that they can look at this. Some of these are really, really cool, especially for like desktop photos or those kinds of things, even not for teaching. So like coffee beans, you know, if you were doing like a cafe unit, something like that. Pexels is another just regular photo thing. Again, this is like their legal page. And then Flickr, you guys might have heard of. Now Flickr is not necessarily just open photos, but it's also a very good place to find photos. So again, I'm going to show you how you can tell. Hippopotamus. Okay, so we're going to look at some of these, and we'll scroll down, and on here you can see over here, all rights reserved, and a C with one thing, which means copyrighted, we can't use it. So we will then change this and say all Creative Commons. And that will take away that photo. And now we are only seeing ones that have Creative Commons licenses. If you need one that allows certain things like modifications or things like that, you can make it even more restrictive in your search. But that is a good way to search on Flickr. All right. Yes, always best to cite a source, even if it's not required. So, avoiding copyright infringement, when in doubt, link to resources instead of copying, okay? If you are not sure of the thing's origin, say, look at this photo here, and a link, and have them go to that original website and look at it. That is the best way for you to be able to use copyrighted materials that you might find, like videos, to be able to send them to the original source, to have them look at it there, and then come back to your course website and answer questions about it. And then work with copyright librarians and experts to assist you. So this is just a few from the Big Ten, but we have our own copyright librarians here, and they should be able to help you. They can also help you to get permissions for materials you may want to include in a course pack or things like that, if you cannot find an open alternative. Okay.
All right. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the technology considerations that we thought through as we decided, as we were making decisions on how to best publish and distribute these OERs we're working on. So I'm going to go off of the work of David Wiley, who is one of the founders of the OER movement, and this quote is from him. Poor technical choices make open content less open. So while you may create content that is open by license. So the copyright license you have on it is a Creative Commons license. You may distribute it or use in certain formats or certain ways that restrict the access for other people. I'm just going to show you a few ways in which that can happen. Here's a number of principles, and I distilled them down to 3. It's easier for me to wrap my head around it. The first question is how easy it is for you, for someone who's accessing those OERs, how easy it is for them to edit them. So is the open content published in a manner that makes it content essentially impossible to revise and remix, or is it easy to do so? For example, here's 2 tools that we're all used to using daily. If I'm publishing a module or a unit or what have you in one of these 2 formats, that dramatically impacts my audience ability to edit them, right? So if I post a Word document, you can assume most people will have access to Word and will be able to open it right away and edit it within that distribution format. While if I'm publishing a PDF or even worse, maybe like a scan of a paper document that I've then put it on in a PDF format, that makes it really hard for someone to repurpose and edit. And sometimes that barrier is enough for them to just abandon the endeavor. Like, this is too much work, I'm just going to do my own. I mean, it took me a while to even figure out how to get to the point where I could edit a PDF document. So I figured a lot of people wouldn't even want to go through all that, right? But if you are distributing through an editable format like Word, then that makes it a lot easier. It lowers the barrier to access for that.
Especially when a lot of the software, I think, is you have to pay for.
Exactly.
You get the Acrobat, which is,
Yeah.
Or get other free, cheaper programs.
Right,
So
exactly.
It's not as straightforward.
Exactly. So the next consideration is the level of expertise. So provided that you're distributing a file in an editable format, what kind of expertise does your intended audience need to edit that or to work with the file you're giving out? So for example, how many of you have used LaTeX? Okay, so it's just one person. So LaTeX is a technical writing application that allows you to so if you read journal papers, they're almost always written through LaTeX. It's a publishing application basically. So it's a typesetting. It came out of the print publishing world. It's used to typeset articles and materials, but it's very hard to use. It's not. I mean, I attempted to learn LaTeX when I was writing my thesis, master's thesis, and I actually gave up because I was like, this is just so much work. You're basically coding your materials, right? And if you're in the sciences or if you're doing this a lot, it's worth learning. But if you're an instructor, you probably will never get around using that. So again, if I'm putting out OERs in LaTeX format, that probably makes it so that 95% of people accessing it will just give up. And this is kind of an extreme example, but a lot of there's like video editing or photo editing software that is more difficult to use. That those formats then raise the barrier because they require a level of expertise that is not maybe reasonable. And then the last one is the access to the editing tools themselves. So is your content published in a format that can only be revised or remixed using tools that are expensive or hard to find, obscure, or discontinued? And so here the example is anything under the Adobe Creative Cloud, while it's not obscure, first of all, going back to what we just said, it does require a certain level of expertise, but it's also expensive, and it's not as easily accessible as Word or OpenOffice or Google Docs. And so by releasing materials through, for example, Adobe Creative Cloud files or applications, then you make it more, you make it so that people are required to purchase those to edit them and use them. Does that make sense? So it's a lot, while you'll notice that the examples I had on the left side of the screen were all the ones that are not flashy. So it's really hard to make a flashy and a good-looking material using Word or Google Docs. It's a lot easier. I mean, the purpose for PDF, InDesign, LaTeX, and all these softwares to make something look better, to make something look more professional. But unfortunately, that makes it also harder to access, right? So it comes a point where you have to make a choice. Am I going to create materials that are easy to access, the lowest possible barrier to access, or am I going to make something that, you know, looks good, but then has all these hurdles for people to go through? And personally, that's actually hard for me because I love like good-looking materials, and you know, it's something that I really appreciate and enjoy. But then that kind of goes to the odds with the purpose of OERs, right? And so a concept that has helped me wrap my mind around this, and then I'll pass it on to Emily to conclude, is this idea of the minimum viable product. So this is something that comes out of business and software development, actually. But it's this concept of creating something that employs the least amount of resources to develop, host, and distribute. And so I would also even add there maybe access. So least amount of resources to access, develop, host, and distribute. So think about access and distribution as being your priorities. And so what is the smallest, less complex, or production-heavy material? What does that look like? The smallest you can create that you can still put out. And oftentimes it's a Google Doc with little formatting or a Word document, so that all of the work goes through developing the pedagogy and not necessarily the way it looks.
Yeah, for language learning, it's really important to have solid pedagogy first, and then focus, if you have time, on making it more flashy, right? But you need to basically be able to convey your ideas first. So, before we go back and look at the different questions to make sure we answer all of those, want you to kind of reflect on a few different things from this presentation. If you learned something that you would like to explore or learn more about from this presentation, if you have any stumbling blocks to using OERs either in your classes or your daily life, who makes those decisions? If there are people who are your stumbling blocks, right? Possibly. And then what materials do you currently use, pictures or texts, that may have copyright restrictions? Perhaps you're not quite within the law of using certain things. Could you find OER alternatives? So a simple thing is like PowerPoints, right? If you're using pictures as examples, are all of those cited? Could you go through and change those to open things? So go ahead and turn to the person you were talking to before, or find a new person, and just kind of discuss some of these topics for the next little bit. We'll come back together.
Okay.
I'll meet you halfway.
Where? Oh, yeah.
It's hard to.
Where's the remote?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Again, you can set the restriction for which are. But yeah, the other requisites often are a little bit easier.
No, of course. Yeah.
You can ask anybody or you can send an email to check.
It is open. Yeah. I can send you a link.
See, my problem is still, where do I go
So
to
we're happy to
access
send you
those
stuff.
things?
I will actually.
Is it
I think on the next slide I have a link to it. If it's not this one, I have a link to a similar presentation. So I will
will either make a link very quickly or.
So do you recommend on my slides for the teaching methods to encourage teams to follow good practices?
Oh yeah.
Should I just give the slide
Oh,
creative
yes.
or each of the individual ones that all the other ones?
Creative Commons is always a good one. I actually recorded a very similar presentation. If you want to link to that, it's a YouTube video. It's like 13 minutes long that they can watch. That has pretty much all of the same content. So you can do that.
Okay, where is that?
I will give it to you. Yeah. So.
When we go back to
No, it's really, I cannot navigate away from this or else you'll lose the questions. So.
Yeah, I think I always at least two roles today.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah, it's possible. A lot of them are more like, they're less like traditional music, it's more like, I created this for a video game kind of thing, you know.
So videos on YouTube, are they technically, if I embed that like an IT12, is that technically a violation?
That's questionable.
If the video itself breaks copyright,
Yeah, so like if
then you are also breaking copyright.
so for example, like if you
But like if somebody does something.
right, like if I published my YouTube video on YouTube and I didn't, and maybe I had it on copyright, like, but it was my upload, and then I'm linking to the original source, and the embed code still gets you a
But even if you put something out on YouTube, then you're basically allowing people to see it.
Yes.
Right? So
Unless-
even if she uses yours,
But like for example, like if I upload a Disney film onto YouTube,
Right. No,
that's
absolutely.
you linking to that is
But
still in
like
violation of
if I
copyright.
explain if I do a video of how to cut and I upload it,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fine.
that's not copyright.
No. And you can decide that when you upload it, you can decide what restrictions are on it.
And there's a mention somewhere on the video.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'm just gonna unplug this, I guess. All right. If you need to look at the questions again, I'm gonna unplug this for just a minute. So review the question. Okay.
And that's we're kind of thinking
Yeah, everybody's separate.
Yes.
for other business, not just business, yeah. And so we might be a group of us.
Are you the only Vietnamese?
If you think of that,
But if you share,
What is the purpose of pictures? It's just like kind of trying to tell us an idea that is expressed. I can see actually when I work with something that was like really focused. If it's focused, then I would definitely kind of source on
So I'm
and
gonna
say,
pretend
okay,
that
we could just essentially corrupt it.
yeah.
Or for example, sometimes you do like presentations, like for example, it's kind of like, this will be.
Well, actually, what I do is
As long as it's just like, if you're illustrating the idea, simply I have to say, well, slow down the whole time. And then just a picture of how.
So that, because most
I worked for one textbook needed someone to read everything.
most of yeah, it's totally unedited. Yeah, that's part of the
Old cars, I don't know, old bus lights and all that stuff.
You want to talk to me?
You know, for that stuff, it's easy. But all these textbooks, they always start still talking about like famous shots and stuff like that. It's like a historical thing. And it's
Okay.
Right. Can't really tell that.
First year speaker.
Right, but he's been at a lot of places.
There you go.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, it's always good to see that.
Do you want to delete before time?
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
The best way is attributing, say, pictures. Sometimes they don't have this concept.
you know,
I mean, you know, for example, like, write your thesis and stuff, like you have to cite the text and also write theories. But
I think it is sort of.
it's always good to hear some
Right.
Of course, they should pay more. We don't watch it.
Definitely the great that was like something that I just started this semester for the first time, that this is actually happening now with this kind of presentation again. We're gonna like go over the differentiations from like SSL attribution and all the kind of like additional things that you can also do.
Yeah, I still wish this like German was the first kid from they would really this and make it more flexible and avoid documents and stuff you could modularize. Yeah, building block. In my grade, she used the most. We don't like introduction.
I did it.
Oh.
How do you do it?
The red button.
Yeah.
Because some menu came up and it said that this is play pause. So if I do this again, try to unplug it.
All right, now we know.
There's something on. What is that? Did I break it? Oh, the magnification. Sorry.
I was like, what are you doing?
How do I turn that off? Oh, look. It was so weird.
Somebody's having fun.
It's both published as a PDF and as a the book, yeah, the book.
Yeah, but it is
that's not.
So, but you get a full year.
No, this is usually for the regular
Wait, is it?
and then you can get the PDF and it's nice, it looks nice.
to the picture.
Oh.
Make changes, delete things, and you know.
Alright, well then just face it away from me.
And also it's easier, yeah. And so that kind of.
So this is a good one. You should take your kids on a nice one.
It's less distracting than the bottom right.
But it's not behind like a system.
Okay. So you guys are having some great conversations, and I don't want to take that away from you. So we'll let you continue the conversation after just a few more quick things. So in 2 slides, I will give you access to this presentation. So if you want to go through and be able to click all the links, you can. But I also have additional resources on this page that you can go through and click to. So there's actually for K-12 districts how you can launch OERs in your district. So you might be able to glean some information from that. But there's also 2 ebooks that you guys might be interested in looking at. One is called Going Open with Lang OER, and then creating online learning experiences. And so it's talking about how do you facilitate things in an online environment. How do you make that online classroom cohesive? And then, as I told you before, I have my disclaimer, unless I specified otherwise, everything's taken from Pixabay. So I didn't cite each individual picture, which is a way you can do it, or you can do something at the beginning or the end that tells people where you got your things from. So there are two things that you guys might want to access. So first of all, tiny.cc, CeLTA PD 1017. This is today's presentation, so you can click through that. If you are interested as well, the second link is Copyright Lictal Partnership. I did a video of almost the same presentation, a little bit different, but I did it within a thing called PlayPosit. And it is a tool that allows you to have quizzes built in. So what you guys were doing today, like the what is free use, they actually have to answer that before they are allowed to proceed with the video. So if you have students who might want to watch this to understand copyright issues, you can do that. Can you pause it for 1 second and I will navigate it? Okay. So it's again me just talking.
University.
Wow.
My name is Emily.
Okay. But you go through and it's so you can see it's the same open slide. And then again, what does free use mean? And then they have to do the quiz, right? It costs no money to access, submit, it gives them feedback, and you can go through. So if you want a review of this, you guys can watch the video. Again, has a lot of the same things, goes a little bit more in depth in some of the picture things and how to cite Creative Commons resources is what this video does. So let me go back to that one slide for you guys if you need the links again. But other than that, again, we are presenting what we have learned, and we have talked with our copyright librarians, done a lot of research on this. So we are familiar with a lot of things, but we're not afraid to tell you what we don't know, right? Because we're not lawyers. So, but if you guys have any specific questions, we can help advise you as much as we can, and then give you resources to find other answers if we cannot answer it. So anyway, carry on with your conversations. We have about 10 minutes left in the official PD time, but we're happy to come and chat with you or whatever you guys want if you have additional questions. Can you pause it real quick? And I'm going to go back and make sure that we answered